Welcome to the American Short Story Lesson 3. I'm Cynthia Murphy, Goodwin University professor. In this week's lesson, we will explore the elements that make up the plot of a short story so you have a clearer grasp of the structure that goes into the creation of this art form. This understanding will help you discuss this week's short stories with greater proficiency. The 5 plot elements are exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, and denouement. These 5 elements reflect some of the oldest classic dramatic structures and were refined by German writer Gustav Freytag in the 19th century. The model he used to illustrate the 5 elements is known as Freytag's pyramid. The first plot element is known as exposition. We can see the word expose in the term exposition, and that's just what this part of the story is trying to do. The writer exposes where we are physically, historically, and psychologically. This is commonly referred to as the setting of the story. The time, season, year, weather, and physical location are all revealed in this part of the story. Any historical event that we need to know is also revealed. For instance, if the story starts out with a congratulatory wedding toast, we know the historical setting is a wedding ceremony and someone just got married. We also learn about the mood of the story. If the story is joyful, scary, or suspenseful, the writer will create an atmosphere through word and action that reflect the emotions of the story, whether joy, fear, or anticipation. Here's an example. It was a winter day in 5th grade. The late afternoon sky was getting dark. I had missed the bus and sat down on the school wall to try to figure out what to do. It was now getting late, but I felt embarrassed to tell anyone that I was stranded, and my parents were at work. I decided to just walk before it got any later, even though I had to walk through woods and twisted back roads that everyone knew were haunted. The exposition also includes a critical component that ushers the reader off on a journey, creating suspense and intrigue. This is referred to as the inciting incident, and it's often in the form of some kind of conflict. Here the writer hints at the conflict to come. Some of the most well-known conflicts are human versus human versus nature, human versus society, human versus God or the gods, human versus machine, and human versus self. Here's an example. This was the day that I learned what it was like to face my fear. In this example, the reader learns that this inciting incident is internal, most likely a human versus self kind of situation. The next plot element is rising action. Here, readers discover what the main character or protagonist does to resolve the conflict. Action, dialogue, internal dialogue, writer's descriptions, all expose the main character's response to outside forces. Here's an example. I was alone on the path. My feet crunched through packed snow, and that was the only sound I heard until I sensed something and stopped. There was another pair of crunching steps. They stopped suddenly and backed up. I looked around. I didn't see anyone. I heard a crow caw and saw how alone I was, so I kept moving. I thought, maybe there's no one really there, it's just my imagination. But then, the sure sound of another pair of footsteps confirmed my fear. I was not alone. Someone, or more frightening, something, was following me. The next element in a short story's plot is the turning point or climax. This is the part of the story where the conflict is faced head-on. There is no turning back, and it is usually the point of greatest dramatic action. Here's an example. I decided to turn around and face my fear. "Who's there?" I shouted. I heard my echo. Then I saw him. His small head poked around an oak tree. His winter hat was too big for his head, so it fell over an eye, and he had to push it back up into place. It was Mark, my newest friend from homeroom. He had moved in next door about a week ago. I breathed a sigh of relief. During the falling action, readers get a clear sense of the characters' thoughts, deeds, and words that expose how they feel, their perceptions and experiences, and the physical and psychological atmosphere changes that may have taken place. Here's an example. I walked toward him, almost in tears from relief, and asked him, "What are you doing? You scared me. I thought you were a ghost or something." He laughed. I'm so sorry. I saw that you were walking alone and I wanted to make sure you were okay. Suddenly, everything was okay. My fear disappeared in an instant. The winter sun shone brightly amid a technicolor sunset behind the treetops, and we made our way home together. The final element of plot is known as denouement, French for unknot. This is the part of the story where the writer provides a strong sense of closure, exposes any lessons learned, or just ties everything up so that there's a clear completion of the events of the story. So here's an example from the previous story. On this day, I learned that it's important to face my fears. Mark showed me, too, the power of friendship, and that when we look around, true friends come through for us in our time of need. We walked home together that frightful day, and we became friends for life.